He found out the worst way possible that I lied about who my baby daddy is. 26F? I grew up in the Midwest but went to college in California. There, I met Jeff, 26M, and dated him for our last 2 years of college. I stayed in California to get my master's degree after high school, while Jeff went to work. We were content with each other and wanted to get married after I finished my master's. After I finished school, Jeff changed his mind about getting married and having kids because he had problems with loss from his biological father leaving. He broke up with me, and the word heartbroken doesn't even begin to describe how I felt. I stayed in California because I had a great job there and hoped Jeff would change his mind so we could get back together. We didn't. He started going out with Grace, 25F, about 5 months after we broke up. Once I knew it was over, I started making plans to move back to my home state. After that, he and Grace broke up at the start of this year. Jeff and I slept together a few times while they were no longer together. It was a public breakup, so there was no cheating. He told me that he and Grace were getting back together, about a week after our last sex. In order to be fair to Grace, he said he couldn't stay friends with me because he still felt something for me and had to let it go. His last words to me were that I shouldn't call him unless I was really dying and just wanted to say goodbye. After 3 weeks, I left California. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after I got back home. It belongs to Jeff. That girl who gets pregnant to get a guy back. That's not me. That's why I deleted all of my social media accounts and made new ones without my name on them. The only people in Cali I added were close friends who I knew had nothing to do with Jeff and would keep my new accounts a secret from him. I messed up early in my pregnancy when I checked out. I looked at Jeff and Grace's profiles and saw that they both called each other love of my life. Jeff even had a picture of the two of them together with the statement, "I'm going to marry that girl that hurt me again." So I blocked them both and chose to move on with my life. I'm 6.5 months along now. I got my own house in my home state and have been busy building a nursery for my baby since I moved back. I love this little baby in my tummy already, and I'm sure I can raise and take care of him on my own with only a little help from my family. Some of my best friends from California were getting married. I chose to fly out to see my friends and wish the happy couple well before my life becomes all about the baby. I won't be able to go to the wedding because I'll be busy with the baby at that time. It was great to see all of my friends yesterday, even though it had only been about 6 months since I last saw them. I got into town on Thursday. Everyone knew that I didn't want them to take pictures of me below the chest. The shots they put online of me only make it look like I put on some weight around my face. There is nothing that would show that I am pregnant. There are a few days left until my flight home, and the friend I'm staying with suggested we go to the store to get a scrapbook for a friend who was getting married. We went to the store, and as we were leaving, I saw Tanya, Jeff's cousin, who is about 22 years old, come in. I talked to her a few times at Jeff's family events over the years, but we never got along. She always talked about other people too much for me to like her, so I didn't want to see her. First, she told everyone in the store out loud that I was pregnant, like they couldn't tell just by looking at me. She then starts to question me and asks Jeff if he knows. I told him no, and that he doesn't need to know. I did lie and said it was his, but I didn't want to start a big fight. Tanya then tells me I'm far along because of how big my belly is and asks how I got here so fast. I told her Jeff and I broke up a long time ago. She replied that everyone knew we were still seeing each other at the start of the year. That was something I didn't know everyone knew. I thought Jeff would not have said anything about that. Anyway, I lied and told her I was 5 months pregnant and had a new boyfriend. She seemed to understand that and complimented me in a strange way. My friend and I paid for her things and then left right away. I hoped that was the end of it. Because Tanya likes to talk about other people, she went ahead and said she saw me pregnant a few hours later. Several of my friends have texted me to say that Jeff is sending a lot of emails to try to get in touch with me. They haven't told him my new phone number or social media link, so he can't get in touch with me himself. I'm going crazy because my trip home isn't for 2 more days. Some of my friends think I should just tell him the truth since he already knows I'm pregnant. For now, I'm still going to say that I can act like it's not his, and that it's someone else's. To be honest, I just want to ignore him and go home. But I'm not sure that's the best choice, and no one agrees on what to do, so I'm asking people I don't know on the internet. As of 1 second ago, it is August 2023. Hey everyone, based on my post, most people agreed that I should tell Jeff that the baby is his. From what was said in the beginning, it was clear that we did meet up. If anyone is interested, here's what happened, even though it wasn't very exciting or interesting. His phone rang at the place where I was staying with a friend. I only wanted to talk on the phone, but he demanded that we meet right away. It would have been better to wait until the next day, but I wanted to get it over with right away, and he seemed to want to do the same. I honestly thought he was going to say he didn't want anything to do with the kid because I couldn't think of any other reason he would want to talk to me that very moment. Remember that it was almost 10 o'clock at night. My friend and I went to his folks' house to wait for him. I guess I felt at ease being there because his parents always treated me like family, even though we probably should have met somewhere else. When we got there, Jeff's mom was there to greet us. When she hugged me, I could tell she wanted to touch my stomach, but she didn't. She didn't even ask. I'm glad I've always liked her. As she led me to the living room, we made awkward small talk. The place was still messy, with streamers and drinking cups all over the place. It was clear that they had just had a party. Jeff and Grace were in love and holding hands on the couch. It shocked me that at first I didn't feel anything for him. He offered me a seat, but I decided to stand instead. I wasn't going to stay there for long anyway. So Jeff asked me why I hadn't told him. I told him I might be able to fool Tanya, but he knows I would never have met a new guy and gotten pregnant that quickly. I was honest with him, and told him that the last time we talked, he told me not to call him, unless I was really dying. I'm not dying, he told me that he was trying to be respectful to Grace, and that obviously this would have been an exception. Grace chimed in to tell me that I ruined her proposal. I found out later, third-hand info, but knowing Tanya, I believe it, that the party at his parents' house was for him to propose to Grace in front of all their friends and families. Tanya waited until after the proposal, and when people were giving speeches, she told Jeff she was so glad he got away from me and wasn't going to be stuck raising my baby. Then all hell broke loose at the party, apparently. I had no idea that happened at the time, or I honestly would not have went to see him at all. But hearing that he proposed was when it hurt. He broke up with me cause he was scared of marriage and kids, but he dated her not even half as long as we did, and she got a ring. I put on a brave face, or at least I think I did, and acted like it didn't bother me. But it absolutely did. His mom told Grace that it's not my fault and now wasn't the time for that. Then Jeff told me that obviously I can't move now. I told him that I already did, and I was only in California for the weekend. He countered, saying that I have to move back. I told him no, I'm not doing that. He said, well, I can't just leave. At that point I got frustrated and told him that I left months ago. My job is in my home state. I bought a house. All my doctor's appointments have been there. I established residency there a long time ago. California isn't my home anymore and hasn't been for half a year now. So then he got frustrated and got up to approach me, asking if he's just supposed to send a paycheck once a month and saying this wasn't how it was supposed to happen. I don't really know what he meant by that second part cause he just found out I was pregnant a few hours before, but I assumed he was taking about his life plans. I forced myself to calm down and try to be empathetic. I told him that if he was worried about this screwing up his plans for the future, that he had nothing to worry about. I don't want or need anything from him. I've planned everything out from finances to childcare when I return to work to even setting up my baby's college fund. It's all taken care of already. He didn't really say anything. I didn't know if he was thinking or just relieved that I had it all handled. I told him he can still get married to Grace and have his own family someday. I promised I wouldn't bother or blame him for anything. My baby will be loved and cared for. Jeff got teary-eyed and told me that I know how he feels about this. He was referring to when he broke up with me and said that he didn't want to be a dad because he didn't think he'd be a good one. He also has abandonment issues from his bio dad walking out on him, his siblings, and his mom when he was 6. I told Jeff that he's not him, his bio dad, that he's better than him and always will be. His mom started crying at this point, I guess from seeing how his dad's abandonment still affects him to this day. I promised Jeff that I wouldn't let my baby think that Jeff was a deadbeat. I'd be honest that we just weren't meant to be together and we live thousands of miles apart. He told me that he can't just not be in his kid's life, and that I don't understand what it could do to them. He asked if we could please just figure something out together. I asked him what did he realistically expect would be a solution. Because I'm not moving back to California and I highly doubt he and Grace wanted to pack their bags and move that far away from their own families and friends. I said I'm not going to be sending my kid on a plane every few months either. Because that's too much. Jeff didn't say anything to that, so I told him maybe that could be an option when he's older and has more independence, but right now it's not happening. Jeff's eyes lit up and he asked, "It's a boy?" I'd been careful not to reveal the gender up until then, but I messed up there. I nodded and he nervously asked if he could feel the baby. Before I could even respond, Grace let out this loud wail and stormed off to the kitchen. His mom excused herself as well as she was still crying. So she left and her husband followed her. That left me and my friend awkwardly standing alone in the living room. All we hear is his mom sniffling in the hallway and Grace sobbing while talking to Jeff in the kitchen. It was so incredibly uncomfortable. And I know many will hate me for this, but I just felt overwhelmed by the whole thing. Maybe it makes me pathetic, But having to stand in the room where a party was just held to celebrate Jeff proposing to another woman hurt so damn bad. So I left. I told my friend, let's get the hell out of here. And we quietly walked out. We ended up staying in a hotel, and I was able to get an earlier flight home on Sunday. Now I'm back home and putting my focus back on the nursery. I told my friends that I had talked to Jeff, and I apologized if he still tried to reach me through them. I advised them to block him if it's too much. I know this isn't the end of things. I'm planning on reaching out to him again eventually. Even if he broke my heart, I still care about him, and I won't deny him a relationship with his kid if that's what he really wants. I have no idea how it's going to work, and I'm only allowed to update once, so I apologize that I won't be able to tell anyone who cares how it all turns out. Thank you for the advice on my last post. Even though everyone was downvoting me and the post itself, it was nice to get opinions without bias. Update 13th of August 2023. I'm a little surprised to be writing this. I thought my update post was one and done, but I guess it got reposted on another sub yesterday and gained traction there, so a bunch of people have requested another update. I wasn't aware that people could make posts on their own profile either, so I feel dumb for thinking that I could only update once, but here we are. I greatly appreciate the newer comments supporting me. The few comments I got from the relationship advice sub were all in support of Jeff and downvoting everything I commented. I felt like I was crowned the queen of hell over their TVH. I haven't replied to any of the new comments because while most of you just read about the incident yesterday, for me it was 2 weeks ago. My hormones are all over the place due to my pregnancy, but thankfully I'm past the headspace I was in that day and when I first returned home. I do appreciate all the well wishes for me and my baby though. Before I give an update, I wanted to clear a few things up. First, I've seen a lot of comments saying that Jeff proposed to Grace within a few months after they started dating. That's not true. Aside from the 1-month breakup where Jeff and I conceived the baby, they were together roughly a year and a half before the engagement. Assuming they had no more breakups after. Like their full history, nor do I care to. Second, I feel like people were being a bit harsh on Jeff. I can honestly say he is not an abusive or controlling person. The man never so much as raised his voice at me in the 4 years we dated. He was a bit overbearing by demanding that I had to stay in California, because that's where he is, but he just found out about the baby and was panicking that I'd disappear and he wouldn't be able to contact me, which, to be fair, that's exactly what I did, so I get it. I had a million thoughts, some wildly ridiculous when I think about it now, running through my own head when I found out too. Third, he wasn't juggling Grace and I at the same time like people think. She broke up with him. They both thought for good at the time. He and I started having sex again, but it wasn't like we were in a sequel of the lovey-dovey honeymoon phase. It was a weird and confusing time. We weren't talking about getting back together. I already had a start date for my new job back home and my move was scheduled. He didn't know any of that. I was still in love with him, of course, and I hoped he'd tell me he wanted to get back together and I would have stayed, but he didn't. Finding out he was getting back with Grace hurt, but I can't say I felt used for sex. I don't think either of us knew what the hell we were doing by sleeping together again in the first place. Jeff is a simple man, overall. I promise he's not some supervillain taking advantage of women and playing with their emotions. I'm not making excuses for him. I wish it were that easy to say that he's a dirtbag and you should give me all your sympathy. In reality, I know who Jeff is as a person. Anyone who read my posts knows him as just a collection of bad and/or questionable choices he made. If you summarize anyone up to just the bad shit they've done, of course they'd come off as an unlikable person. Jeff's not evil or manipulative. He's just got some stuff he probably should have worked 3 years ago. And admittedly, I never thought his issues were that prevalent until we broke up. Plus, I'm positive that Grace knew we slept together while they were broken up. There's no way that was a shock to her. He would have told her himself. And even if he somehow hadn't, if Tanya knew, then everyone else knew shortly after, guaranteed. Lastly, I appreciate everyone concerned about any custody issues that may arise from this. I was also amused by the people who were hyping themselves up, thinking that I was delusional and actually going to be forced to put my baby on a plane by court order. I'm not sure why so many people on Reddit are used to dysfunctional relationships where judges and a huge custody battle need to be involved, but that's not us. Jeff and I were together, and very much in love for years. It might be hard to picture that when you've only read about the shitty end of our relationship, but everything before the breakup was an ideal relationship, which is exactly why it hurt me so much when he ended it. Things are weird now, but we don't hate each other. Our default option, even in a complicated situation like this, is not we're taking this to court. That would be the last resort. I'm sure we'll work it out between ourselves long before it ever gets there. So on to the actual update. I planned on contacting Jeff after a couple weeks. I wanted to take time to gather my own thoughts and figure out what I wanted to say. Instead, I got phone calls from his number about a week after I returned home. He left a voicemail asking me to call him so we could talk. I was honestly furious because there's no way he should have been able to find my number unless somebody told him. It might not seem like it's a big deal, but to me I saw it as there being somebody who betrayed my trust in them. I texted him asking how he got my number. He said it wasn't important and that he wanted to talk. I said it is important to me, but he still didn't want to tell me. I told him, we can talk when he tells me who he got my number from. So finally he told me who it was and sent a screenshot of the conversation when I asked for proof. It was the second least likely friend I would have expected to break my trust. That's a whole other story though. So we talked over FaceTime and he told me that he absolutely wants to be in our son's life. He doesn't know how it's going to work long term and neither do I. There was no threat of lawyers or his mom shouting grandparents' rights in the background like people were expecting. We're adults and we'll figure it out. The situation is not any easier to handle logistically, but emotions from that night have died down and we have clearer heads to move forward with. He did, however, have the audacity to tell me that he hates that I didn't tell him much sooner and that I wasn't planning to tell him at all until Tanya found out, because he thought we meant more to each other than that. I told him I thought we did too, until he told me not to contact him unless I was dying. That shut him up quickly, because he knows now that it was an extreme and unnecessary thing to say even if he wanted to cut contact with me. He's apologized for it, and I apologized for not telling him about the baby myself. That's all we can really do. We're about to co-parent a child together, so we don't get the luxury of holding a grudge with one another over past slights. He also told me that he and Grace are no longer together. He claims that it was a mutual decision, but that sounds too easy to me. How do you go from newly engaged to broken up in 18 hours with it being a completely clean process? I'm guessing he's just sparing me the ugly details on what must have actually happened. I do feel bad for Grace, other than incorrectly assigning blame for her ruined engagement party. She didn't do anything wrong. I don't know her personally, but her proposal night should have been one of the best nights of her life, and it was ruined. I wouldn't want that for any woman. And because I know what everyone is going to say, no, I am not seeing this as an opportunity to get back together with Jeff. Honestly, my focus is on my son right now. I'm not thinking about jumping into a relationship with anyone, much less the man who broke my heart once already. I think Jeff and I need to figure out how we're going to co-parent first and foremost, and TBH, I want a man who loves me and chooses me for the person that I am. Not because I happen to have given birth to his child. Plus I don't know that I could ever get over that he proposed to Grace over me. Even if they broke off their engagement, I still want to know why she got a ring and I didn't. And I'm going to ask eventually, but I don't think any answer will ever make it okay to me. A lot of people said it wasn't that he didn't want marriage, he just didn't want it with me. I find that hard to believe because, as I said above, we really had an ideal relationship. Our breakup wasn't a buildup of issues. It really was as simple as you want marriage and kids. Which I think most would agree is just the natural end of a relationship. If it really is as simple as I just wasn't the one, then I want him to look me in the eyes and tell me that himself. Jeff is a terrible liar even when he's lying for a good reason like a special surprise. He fidgets his fingers and can't maintain eye contact when he's lying. So if he looks me in the eyes and tells me his reason for why he chose to marry her and not me, I'll know if he's being honest. Jeff also told me that his mom wanted to send me stuff for the baby, so he asked for my address. I declined. I'm positive that there are no nefarious reasons and she's just excited and wants to help. This will be her first grandchild. However, I still felt a little uncomfortable giving them my home address. He's been texting me every day and calls me every night to say goodnight. Sometimes he wants to talk to the baby. It's a bit confusing for me because he broke up with me, because he didn't want a kid, but now he wants to be involved to the point where he's going out of his way to contact me and ask if I need anything. It's strange and I don't really understand how his brain works, but like I said in my last post, I won't deny him a relationship with his kid if he wants one. Jeff wants to visit me in person too. Talk properly. But I told him I'm not sure if that's necessary right now. He asked to come last weekend and I said no. Then he asked again about possibly coming this weekend, but I told him I can't because I'm having my baby shower on Saturday. He wants to come. I'm not sure if that's a great idea. I'm not worried that he would say or do anything bad and we're getting along over text/VC. I can tell that he just wants to be involved, but part of me feels like it's sort of, I don't know, playing house almost? I guess it wouldn't be a big deal if I made it clear he would be here as a friend and the father of the baby, but not as anything more. My parents don't think it's a good idea, but I know that's just because they don't like Jeff ever since he broke up with me. My sister, who is more level-headed, says that it could be a show of good faith that I'm serious about having a healthy co-parenting relationship, and it'll probably be easier to build that foundation now before the baby comes. My brothers don't care either way, but they say they're ready to beat up Jeff if he does or says anything stupid. He won't. But I love my brothers for always looking out for me. I'm not sure what I'm going to decide, but I know Jeff needs an answer soon, so he can book a flight in a hotel room if I do say yes. I'm open to suggestions.